Hey everyone, welcome to Two Car Pros. My name is Ryan, and today I'm going to show you how to bleed your brakes even if there's air trapped in your ABS system. So before we go any further, there is a time down below where you can just advance to and get right to work. But for the rest of you, I'm going to go ahead and explain how an ABS system works and how air can get in there. So back in the olden days, you would just have air in your brakes and you bleed them like normal and you're good to go. But we put ABS modules in there and they have a little motor that controls a bunch of valves inside of it, and that helps pulse the brakes so you don't end up in a skid situation, which can be dangerous and deadly. And ABS has saved a lot of people over the years that panic in those situations and don't know to let off the brakes when they're in a skid situation. So the car kind of does it for them using ABS, or analog braking system. So it uses a motor to send pulses through valves, so that way the brakes kind of come on and off really, really quickly. You might have felt this before if you're in an extreme braking situation and you put your foot to the floor on the brake and the pedal kind of vibrates or pulses back and forth and it feels a little weird on your foot. That's your ABS motor working right there. So why does this matter? Well, there's valves inside of that module that can get air in them. And if they aren't being actuated, well, there's really no way for you to get air out of them. And that can lead to air being inside the braking system and not working and throwing ABS codes and doing a bunch of other things. So that can be a genuine problem, and it is a little bit of a pain in the neck to figure out how to get that done. And what you're gonna need is a pretty high-end scanner. And I have my MK808 down below in the description. It's a little expensive, but it is a scanner that I recommend because it is worth every penny, if you ask me. Even to just a home person that's doing this as a DIY, I would absolutely invest in this, because cars are only going to get more complicated. They're not going to get less complicated, so you have to keep up with the current day scanners. So air can end up in that ABS system a number of ways. The first way is while you're taking apart the brakes or replacing a caliper or something, and air gets in there. And it's very difficult to get it back out. The other way is very interesting. The other way can happen even if you haven't opened the system. You can just be driving your car normally, but if you use ABS kind of a lot, like let's say you're off-roading in a truck or something and you're riding the brakes a ton and the ABS is coming on a bunch, what can happen is because the ABS is pulsing so much, it's moving that fluid back and forth a ton, the seals on the caliper are only really meant to work one way. So when the caliper is asked to do this and pulse a ton, air can actually go up and through that seal because it's only designed to seal one way. It doesn't want to let fluid out. It's not so great at preventing air from coming in. So that's another way air can get back up into the ABS system. Even if you haven't opened the system, it's completely possible for that to happen. But don't be too afraid of this job, because it is just like a regular brake bleed, almost exactly the same. You're gonna need another person, however. That's why I can't really show everything all at once. I only have one camera. So just follow the instructions. You're gonna need another person, like I said, and you'll be just fine. I did this repair on my 2005 F-150. I also showed the brake bleeding part on my 1967 Camaro, just because it was on the lift, and I can't get really great camera angles on the ground, and the process is exactly the same because the way you bleed disc brakes has never changed, with the exemption of ABS, which we're gonna go over. So with all that out of the way, let's grab our fancy pants scanner and head over to our vehicle. So to start scanning, we need to just plug in our MK808, just like that. And then we need to put our key in the ignition and put it to the second position, basically the ignition position. If you have a push button start or something, more modern car, just go ahead and get it to the ignition where, the dials sweep and come back. Just make sure that the ignition is on, but the engine is off. So in order to perform this service, you're going to need a pretty high-end scanner such as this one. It's made by Autel, called a Maxicom MK808. Link is down below in the description. You're gonna need a scanner that can actually open and close valves inside of the ABS system. So keep that in mind when you're shopping for a scanner. I really like this one. So here we want to select service, and then we want to select up here on the top right, brake bleed, because that's what we want to do. We want to bleed the brakes. Now it's going to ask for our VIN, or you can go through the menus and select it out. I like just clicking on the VIN and auto detecting, make the machine do the work, and it's going to find our VIN and get our exact match. And this is a Ford USA. This is a Ford F-150 in North America, so it's a Ford USA product. There's our VIN number. We can hit OK. Once we get to this screen, we can go over some details and confirm what it is, and that's exactly what it is. It's a Ford F-150 3-valve 5.4, one of the most, I don't want to say worst, but yeah, it's the worst V8 Ford's probably ever put out. If you ever see one of these F-150s, go ahead and avoid them, unless you're getting it for very, very cheap and you don't mind replacing engines. So that is going to be our test vehicle for today. Yes, that is it. Here we get to these three selections. We're going to click on hot functions because it's a function that is hot or when the ignition is on. And then we're going to select ABS analog brakes bleed. So next we need to open the left front bleeder screw and attach a fluid container. So that would be just like any other brake job. Pretty easy there. So here is the back of our brake caliper, and the eagle-eyed among you will notice that this is not a 2005 F-150. This is actually my 1967 Camaro, but the concept is exactly the same. That is how communicable and applicable this knowledge actually is, because the part where you bleed is exactly the same as it's always been. That has never changed and probably never will. So what we can do is remove our dust cap off our bleeder. Perfect. So on our bleeder up there, we're going to take some hose. I have some 7/32 hose, and that's going to fit over our bleeder, and then we're going to cut it and run it to a nice jar. So what I like to do is put our wrench on first, like that, perfect, and then we can put our hose on and stick that hose down into some brake fluid. So here's our setup, wrench on the fitting into our hose that's coming down into my measuring cup that I have filled with a little new brake fluid, because we don't want this hose to ever suck air ever. That would completely eliminate the whole point of bleeding our brakes. So when the tablet tells us to, we're just gonna go ahead and open the bleeder just like that, while we are doing our ABS service, bleeding our brakes just like regular. And then when it tells us to close our brakes, we're gonna go ahead and just tighten that fitting back up. Doesn't have to be Hulk tight. And once that has been accomplished, we can go ahead and remove our hose. Oh, I got a bit of brake fluid there, that's okay. You just wipe that down real quick, remove our wrench, just like that, very good. And then replace our dust cap. Perfect. And that process is exactly the same for all four corners of the car. So we can hear the valves opening and closing, and what that does is it's going to be able to cycle air out of our system. So this is working on our left front, and it's going to go all the way around the truck until we've bled all four corners. So we only need to really show you the left front because the other three are exactly the same. So you're going to pump for 2 seconds while it's doing this in 2-second intervals, down and up in those 2-second intervals. Okay, so after it has done that for 75 seconds, like it says, we're gonna close that left front bleeder screw just like a regular brake job. That's no different. And we're gonna hit OK. And then it's gonna go in the right front brake bleed. So it's gonna be exactly the same for the right front, and then the left rear, and then the right rear. So just do that exact same thing again, making sure to depress the brakes in 2-second intervals. Just go very slowly. And of course, while we're doing this, keep an eye on your brake fluid level and top it off if it's dropped any. All right, now we're done pumping. That has been bled. We can go ahead and close our brake screw and remove our jar. And we're all done. That's it. It is basically a regular brake bleed job with one extra step. This tablet will walk you through the entire thing. And then we need to set our ignition switch to off. And we have done that, it's off, we're gonna hit OK, and we're done. That's it, service complete. Now we can actually just disconnect our MK808 because our ignition's already off. So we can just go ahead and remove our scanner. And there you go, that's how to bleed brakes with ABS. It is pretty simple, honestly. You just need that scanner and you follow the prompts and pump the brakes in those 2-second intervals, like I said, and it is something you could absolutely do in your garage at home with just a couple of minutes and a helper. So you really want to set up your helper pumping those brakes, and then when it stops, your helper can tell you, hey, close the bleeder, and then you can close the bleeder and air won't get back in. You never want to close the bleeder when the brakes or pedal's coming back up. You want to close the bleeder when the brake pedal is down. Wanted to go ahead and mention that as well. And then once you've closed the bleeder while the brake pedal's down, let the brake pedal come back up very slowly. And that is it. That wasn't so bad. If I've helped you at all today, please think about subscribing down below, and I hope I've earned a like from you. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.